It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you look on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board, you see the logos of the private equity groups. You see the logos of the mega dealers they own. And I'm asking some questions. Here are those questions. What's the next big move with private equity? Holy smokes, we're all waiting for a big move, right? Will Ares Capital finally eliminate Visual Edge IT from its portfolio? That's a question a whole lot of folks are asking. How does DEX Imaging get to the billion? I saw a post on LinkedIn where DEX Imaging was talking about getting to $1 billion in revenue by the end of 2025. And I'm thinking, wow, that's only 7 months away. You better make a big acquisition. And then I started asking these questions. Will private equity buy Konica Minolta U.S? You think about the direct operation, Konica Minolta U.S. with all covered? Boy, if private equity bought that, if Gamut Capital and DEX Imaging went and bought the direct operations from Konica Minolta with all covered, well, they'd get an IT business. They'd get a whole bunch of revenue from the print business. Maybe they could get to that $1 billion by the end of 2025. Another question I got to ask, is it time for POA to go in the hands of private equity? POA, a lot of drama going on with POA, right? Aren't they dubbed the nation's largest independent copier business? There's no private equity in POA, but maybe the time has come. We know that POA has faced a whole lot of drama ever since that news article was published in the Oregonian back in July of 2024. Remember that article? Holy smokes. It was so disgusting, a lot of people couldn't even read it. And then it kept getting followed up by other articles that were more disgusting than the article you just read. And now, what are we seeing? We're seeing the ex-CEO of POA suing POA for $70 million. A lot of things going on in our industry. But when I saw that social media post about DEX Imaging wanted to be $1 billion by the end of 2025, I thought, man, they got to do something quick. They got to buy somebody up quick. Can they buy UBEO? Well, they probably could. Would it get them the number? It might. Could they buy Visual Edge IT from Ares? Whoever buys Visual Edge IT from Ares, let me just say it this way. I believe that would be a whole lot of work, and I'm not too sure that it would be beneficial at this point for DEX Imaging and Gamut Capital to gobble up Visual Edge IT, unless they could get it like dirt cheap, which is a possibility. What about Marco? You know, Norwest owning Marco. Man, they've owned them for so damn long. I mean, seriously, I ought to change the name to Norwest and just call it Norwest Copiers. Norwest IT. But what's going on with it? Why can't they sell that thing? You know, if Gamut and DEX bought Marco, that'd probably get them that $1 billion. They'd have an IT business there, right? I did an episode on that. I thought that made a lot of sense. We got Oval Partners, the owners of FlexPrint. You know, Oval Partners, they also have an asset called New Charter, and that's a roll-up of IT services companies. It seems that Oval Partners is putting a lot of emphasis on that business. Are they ready to get out of the print business? You know, of course, if Oval Partners sells FlexPrint, that's probably going to be at a pretty good price, a premium price. I think FlexPrint's a pretty well-run company, right? So, do the Doyles want to buy something at a high price, or do they want to buy something on sale? On sale would probably be the Visual Edge IT, but that wouldn't get them to the $1 billion. They'd have to add something else on top of that. And like I said, I think cleaning up Visual Edge IT would take a lot of work. You wouldn't be able to buy them as somebody else at the same time, if you will. Novatech, you know, Novatech just had a bite of their second bite of the apple when Perpetual Capital gobbled them up. You know, I'm not sure that, you know, they're ready to be gobbled up again by DEX Imaging and Gamut. And again, if they did, they'd probably have to pay a premium for that. And do they really want to pay a premium? I think the favorable ones are really Konica Minolta's direct operations with all covered, and POA if they could pull it off. I mean, those would be ones I can't imagine are going to fetch top dollar, if you know what I mean. But ladies and gentlemen, it was April 23rd of 2024 when we saw the press release about Gamut Capital acquiring DEX Imaging along with the Doyles. And, you know, I was excited about it because I predicted it. But when I look back on this whole thing with DEX Imaging and Staples, you know, I predicted that a mega dealer would sell to either Office Depot or Staples. It ended up that DEX Imaging sold to Staples. And I predicted that because I had a vision. I had a vision that we could have demo rooms in all those stores across the country. I had a vision that we could be selling e-commerce from all those stores to all of the mega dealers' customers. None of that seemed to be going the way I thought it would go, and I'm pretty sure that Sycamore Partners kind of got bored with it. And when I really felt that they got bored with it, I did an episode and said, you know what, I really believe that DEX Imaging will buy themselves back from Staples. And of course, April 23rd of 2024, that announcement happened. But here we are a year later, and is Gamut Capital bored? Is Gamut Capital thinking maybe the way Sycamore was thinking? I mean, what's going on here? Where's the movement? Where's the movement? I saw this post on LinkedIn. DEX wants to get to $1 billion by 2025. I saw this article in ENX Magazine dated November 30th of 2024 saying DEX Imaging was $495 million. So they're a $500 million company. They got to double their size. And folks, you know, by the way, when Staples bought them in 2019, in that press release it said they were a $300 million business. So they've grown from 2019 through 2024 a couple $100 million, most through acquisition, right? And they're never going to get to that $1 billion without an acquisition. There's just no way in the world, right? I mean, they need $500 million in 7 months to reach the $7 billion, or to reach the $1 billion. It took DEX 23 years to reach $495 million. Who can they buy to reach the $1 billion? I've made my suggestions. Konica Minolta, it's all their direct operations and all covered. POA would be 2 good examples, and I believe they could get both of those at a pretty good price. But here's the question. How much debt can they handle to operate successfully at $1 billion in revenue? I mean, it's one thing to go out there and buy your growth. It's another thing to be able to manage that debt. And you know, these private equity folks, well, you know what I'm thinking? They're asking where the hell is the strategy? This is what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm thinking the private equity folks are asking, where is this viable strategy? And what is it? Because I think there's only 2. There's financial engineering, or the strategy is about an optimistic future that's based in reality. Let's talk about financial engineering first. You know, at the end of the day, there's some of these organizations out there that you could gobble up, clean them all up. Basically, just get rid of people. Just, you know, do what financial engineering does. Clean it all up, make a bunch of money, keep making a bunch of money until it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe do a leverage loan against it or whatever financial engineering makes sense for the investment group. But financial engineering doesn't help the industry or its actors. So let's talk about the optimistic future. A lot of our industry thought, well, if they could get into IT services, they would get a bigger multiple, which is true, right? Remember the big announcement? DEX Tech takes off, how DEX Imaging is accelerating into the managed IT services market. I found this interview in the Canada report. But folks, when DEX Imaging first made the announcement that they were going to get into IT with this company called DEX Tech, I got excited about it. I did a video and I explained to you why they were doing it. Hey, they're doing it because they want to get an increased multiple of EBITDA when they, do their exit strategy. Just being a print company is not going to get them that, right? Everybody knows it, right? Multiples have crashed through the floor in our industry if it's just about print. So I'm sure, Gamut Capital, the money people are like, all right, come on, DEX Imaging, we got to get into IT. We got to change the game a little bit. Got excited. And then, unfortunately, I read this interview in ENX Magazine. And when I read the interview in ENX Magazine, I did an episode and I said, holy crap. I am no longer excited about DEX Imaging getting into IT services because the answer is the leader they have in charge of the IT services, or the company called DEX Tech within DEX Imaging. Well, it scares me. The answers he was given scares me. And folks, I pulled up that interview, but this time I wanted to get the interview out of the Canada report. Because our industry loves to do these interviews. Unfortunately, I don't believe that our industry's median analysts, well, I'm just going to say it, I don't believe they have the ability to ask questions regarding the IT services deliverable within the print industry. And when I saw the answers that were given and the questions that were asked, I just got really concerned. And, I'm reading through this. I put in red, to expand on why I didn't like the answer or why I didn't like the question. I want to share a couple of these with you because I think it's important. Because at the end of the day, without a viable strategy, private equity is not going to do much except financial engineer these things, and that's not going to help anybody. So we got to have a viable strategy. Here's a question from the Konica report. I interviewed Dan Dole Jr. last August, and he mentioned that DEX would be getting into managed IT. This is an area that DEX has historically shied away from. Now it sounds like you're all in. Here's the answer. Both Dan's Jr. and Sr. have been very supportive of what we're doing. It is a logical extension of the print business. Every other print business on the planet is either doing this, has thought about doing this, or has tried to do that and failed. It's time for DEX to get into that space. The commercial logic here is pretty simple. The buyer who buys print services is the same buyer who buys IT and cyber services. We're already talking to those people. The commercial logic behind why a 20 to 500 employee size business would outsource IT is the same as why they would outsource managed print. It is not as big of a pivot as many people would think. And I scream, this is craziness. What in the hell? I've been screaming about this for like 10 years. No, it's nothing to do with print IT. Here's what I put in red. Unrealistic optimism regarding print providers pivoting to IT services. That's what this is, a completely unrealistic optimism regarding print providers pivoting to IT services. Where the hell is the proof? How successful this is? It was the first answer from DexTech leader, which gave me serious concerns in DexTech becoming successful at this. That was it. That set the tone. What is your role in this initiative was the question from the Konica report. The answer. It's mine to win or lose. In August last year, the Doyles called me and said, we'd like you to run this and help us create a managed cybersecurity services business within DEX. We wanted to leverage the DEX brand, but differentiate ourselves slightly from the historical print business. There was already a little bit of this business inside DEX, and nobody talked about it. When we bought Meritech in Cleveland and North American office in Orlando, both businesses did a little bit of IT as part of their total business. That factored in the decision to launch this in Cleveland and Orlando. We don't have to teach them how to spell IT. They get it. Ladies and gentlemen, here's some questions that should have been a follow-up to the leader of DexTech's answer. What was the IT business in Cleveland and Orlando? Was it more than 5% of the print services revenues in those markets? Or was it just a hobby? Seriously. What was the reoccurring services revenue percentage? What was the hardware percentage? What was the project work percentage? What was the average cost of a fee-based assessment? Or were they free? Like so many of our friends in the print channel continue to do regarding IT. What was the real IT services deliverable? What was the stack in both Cleveland and Orlando? And again, was it just a hobby? Was it 2% of the revenue, 3% of the revenue? Was there some big win by selling somebody a whole bunch of computers and you're calling it IT services? What exactly was the IT services business? Was there really an IT services, reoccurring services business based on the intellectual abilities of an IT services platform? Folks, here's a simple question I always ask people from the print sector when they tell me they're in IT. And the question is this: do you have a fee-based assessment? If the answer is no, they're not in IT as far as I'm concerned. They haven't reached the maturity level to be able to sell their intellect. And if you can't sell your intellect, you cannot deliver IT services. Seriously. Managed print services is a joke to the IT world. It's a joke. It's not complicated. And it's worth very little of a technology spend. Most IT services companies don't even want to screw with it because it's worth such a little bit amount. And we believe that we're so valuable because we can go in there and deliver managed IT services and save someone 30% on their print, that all of a sudden We're positioned perfectly to pivot into full-blown IT services. It's just absurdity at so many levels. Here's another question. As far as building that organization, what does that organization look like now? And where do you want it to be, say, a year from now? And that goes back to my question. What did you start with in those first two markets? What's changed in those first two markets since you started all this? So you got a new leader in there running up the IT business. He's looking at a Cleveland market. He's looking at an Orlando market. Were those markets delivering the same stack? Were they delivering the same thing? Was their intellectual abilities the same? What did you have to change in those two markets to get consistent? You know, does DEX Tech have a defined IT stack? Have you defined an IT stack that you're going to deliver across the country that's standardized so you can scale that profitably, or are you going to be in everything for everybody? These are important decisions, right? What's the business model? What's the business plan? Because if the plan is, hey, we got all these customers that buy print from us and we're going to go sell them IT services, that plan hadn't worked out very well for a whole lot of folks. What does Incentivized IT mean, which I see highlighted on your website? This was a question from the Konica report. They call this Incentivized IT. Let me read this because I do have a concern around this. Everybody generally gets, we monitor it, we measure it. Those are part of the business. Permissions to show up, if you will. I added that. But incentivize it is I am a big fan of this and have been my entire career. That you have to incentivize engineers to think differently than they traditionally think. They get enamored by tech. They love playing with toys. Incentivizing them to care about customer service, but it doesn't have a quota. But every single person on the team, every single service delivery person, at least 50% of their variable compensation or bonus is tied to the measurement of customer satisfaction, which is different. All of our engineers can earn a bonus based on how happy we make customers. That's the incentivized IT. I just got a comment. There must be a balance between customer service and profitability. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're delivering print equipment, especially if you've been delivering print equipment like the Doyles and DEX Imaging has been doing for a long damn time, like 4 decades, you understand every variable involved with delivering that equipment, its supplies and services. There's nothing new that's going to surprise the Doyles regarding print. They get it all. They understand how to give great customer service. They understand the cost of giving great customer service. But when you move into IT, holy smokes, it's a whole different game, folks. There's so many moving parts. There's so much more complexity that if you have too much of a focus on making everybody happy as far as the customers goes, you might put yourself in bankruptcy. Because the cost to deliver is extremely high if you don't pay attention to those costs. If you don't have the right people delivering the right service. Folks, our industry, those friends of mine that sell supply and service print equipment, it is really, really, really easy for our industry to give good customer service because we know what it means. But we don't know what it means around IT. And at the end of the day, it's a slippery slope because we have to have the right disciplines in place and we have to truly understand the cost to deliver all that complexity that goes with IT services. Unrealistic optimism has cost private equity millions. And without a clear path towards proven concepts, I don't see private equity investing in the future of our industry, period. However, I can see where private equity could benefit by raiding the industry through financial engineering. Of course, that would not be anything good. We better figure out the strategy for private equity. Because private equity, on their own, I don't think has the strategy. Private equity is depending on us for that strategy. And quite honestly, ladies and gentlemen, there's a whole lot of names on this Sharp Interactive board. There's a whole lot of roll-ups that have been around for a whole long time with private equity. And we haven't really seen any big giant home runs regarding delivering IT services through these private equity-backed roll-ups. A lot of people would say Marco's probably doing it the best. I just got to continue to ask the question. If Marco's doing it probably the best, why the hell does Norwest still own Marco? Because you would think, after all these years, somebody would have realized, wow, that's pretty valuable. Ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. direct operations of Konica Minolta and all covered, I do believe, are on the table. Pacific Office Automation, I do believe, is on the table. Visual Edge IT, I believe, is on the table. Because, folks, we all heard this before. I'll say it again. When there's blood on the street, could be time to act. Just some things to think about, but we really need to understand the strategy of IT. It has nothing to do with managed print services. Never has and never will. And everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.